Where's your boot? Where'd it go?
I need to take a shower.
Oh, you need to take a shower?
Yeah.
Well, go find your boot.
Okay.
Okay.
It's dirty.
It's dirty?
Yeah.
Oh no. Hi, welcome back to Homestead to Health. My name is Caitlin, and there have been some new developments happening around here, and I'm really excited to share those with you. You can see that I added my trellis back over there, and I uncovered the shade box garden underneath my window. But we have both trellises up. Cucumber seeds are soon to be planted. Now all this right here is pea greens and onions and things like that. Now I won't be removing the peas or the onions just yet, just because the grains that are going to be going in their place, they're not really pressing right now. I can plant them in a couple of weeks and they'll come up and they'll do just fine here in Texas. Really long growing season, so I'm really thankful for that. So for now, the peas and the onions, they can have their space. Behind me here, if you can see behind me are my cabbage and a couple of bush beans. I'm also going to leave those there for the same reason. Also the grain that I plan on planting here, because these don't really take up a whole lot of real estate, they'll be able to come up anyway. So that's these beds. This bed here, this trough, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep this just as my lemon thyme and my orange mint bed. There are a couple of bush beans in there as well, but everything that's going to be there is there. This shade box has been uncovered because the chickens were put away, and almost immediately the day after, Purdy came through, and today she wreaked just havoc back there, and you can see she kind of had her rampage up here. I'm having such a hard time with her in her puppy phase, but I know it's just a phase. This is my potato bed. As you can see, I had this coverage on here for the chickens, but now that they're in their run, I could probably remove it. Now, I have to fill it up a little bit more with some soil from like the empty space on here. But as you can see, these potatoes are just, they're popping. Here's my greenhouse, looking far more empty than it has ever looked. I've got a couple of squash and watermelon plants up here, just a couple of stragglers. This bed where you see this landscape fabric, I'm going to come through and I'm going to put an auger drill down the center of them and just use that to kind of till and remove the weeds. And my plan here is just to put all of those squash that you saw in there, to put them here. And then these stakes that you see back there and right here, I'm going to create a barrier using rope, and that's what keeps the dogs and stuff out of it. So that's going to be a garden space as well for watermelons and squash and all that yummy stuff. Welcome to my garden. I cannot tell you how many times I actually practiced that. But super excited to have everybody in the garden. Everything is still really small, so I don't have all of my seeds down. We're due for some pretty, I guess, extreme weather tomorrow, so I don't want to put any seeds down that could get washed out, bogged down, or anything like that. So right now I'm just going to talk about all of the awesome transplants that we have in the ground so far. Okay. That was good luck. So I'm going to talk about these first 3 beds. This one is still unfinished, but as you can see, we had to dig a trench through each garden bed. This is because, like tomorrow's extreme rain, whenever we get all of our rain in our rainy season, which actually starts next month, I thought that this was good preparation as far as not letting the plants get waterlogged or bogged down. Something that we face a lot here in our area is like tomatoes splitting and just like different vegetables splitting just because of so much water coming. So this is it. This is our safety net as far as that goes. Also, because we had tilled way in advance, we had to come back and hand weed all of these beds, and that took 4 or 5 days. But so yes, this is our last unplanted space. And that's where our herbs are gonna go. And I'm gonna direct seed a lot of herbs there. I'm loving these butterflies already, but let's move on. So this is our second bed, and the reason that this gets a pretty honorable mention is because This is where all of my real black eggplants are. They're still fairly small, and I was able to get away with sneaking in my orphan honeywort plant. It's beautiful, it's gonna be beautiful, but otherwise I have a pretty basic pattern that I followed. With all of my plants being really small right now, there's just not a lot to really show, and so I'm gonna kind of detail how we went about planting. We have 7 beds that we did this method with, and the method is plant a row of tomatoes and then end cap it or separate it with either marigolds, borage, or different types of basil. And the reason for that is because that is the epitome of companion planting as far as I am concerned. Marigolds attract awesome pollinators, the basil deters pests, and it's just really good to have these plants in close neighborhoods, I suppose. So that's what we did, and at each 7 beds for the tomatoes, I would plant a type of tomato, which I have several, and I'll be able to detail that later, but I have several types of tomato that I capped with basil. And that's such an exciting thing for me too, is because not all basils are the same. Here we have the purple basil. Over here we have holy basil, and it's, I'm getting a little carried away, I'm getting really excited. But that's the interplanting that I chose to do. There's another kind of interplanting that I chose to do though in a different bed. Okay, so here is a prime example of what I'm talking about. These are buttercup squash, and the reason that I chose buttercup squash, because they're planted in several different areas, is because they're really good sweet potato alternatives, but they're also supposed to be pretty pest resistant, which is a big deal here in Texas, or just in the South in general. Squash bugs are the devil. But what I've done, even though necessarily they don't need these things, is I put nasturtiums in between my squash plants. So everywhere that I have a squash plant planted, I also have a nasturtium to keep it company. Now, the coolest thing about nasturtiums is not only are they really good pest control, but they taste good. In fact, I tasted one last summer, and it tasted exactly like something peppery. So it had a very good peppery taste, and so it's something that I look forward to eating again this year, maybe in salads. Which brings me to my next point. Okay, so, but the last time I tried to show on camera that you could eat it, I accidentally got a mouthful of sand, so I'm trying to cleanse it before so. I did not do a good job. It tastes like cucumber, it just has the grit of sand. Tastes like cucumber though. It's grit. Alright, so moving away from that train wreck. Over here, this is our 3rd bed from the gate, and this one is a little different just because this doesn't fit in with my peppers, my Mod Podge. This is a planned garden space. So what I have here is right here and closer to the gate, I have 2 squash and pumpkin. They're gonna go that way, and I'm gonna let them kind of block out the weeds on this side of the fence. Now on this side of the fence and that side on the other side of the garden, there's gonna be things like jelly melons, jicama, and all kinds of things that I'm gonna be, like I said, probably a couple of videos ago, this is going to be more of a food forest. Every time I come into the garden in a couple of weeks, I'm going to have to bring a basket to harvest everything that is growing here. Kind of like an open pantry concept, I suppose. But here we have 1 squash, whatever, but then it's Aunt Molly's ground cherries, red sorrel, cherry, red sorrel, and I just did that pattern there till the end, where I plugged in some of my red calleas, or my campfire calleas. It was beautiful, and it was actually the first thing I've ever saved seeds from. I grew it last year. Luckily, everything's small enough I can still do this. Like an athlete. But, so on this side, I did the, kind of the same idea with like the patterning the plants, and I did huckleberry, and then pineapple tomatillo, huckleberry, so on and so forth. And that's what makes up this bed. I've got my ground cherries, my husked fruit, a couple of berries. I I'm excited. Everything is so small here though. I think I'm most excited for this bed to come up, just because everything looks kind of unassuming, but I know that here in a couple of weeks it could look pretty big and very different. Behind me, this is row 1. This is where the corn and the sunflowers and things like that are going. So in true Caitlin fashion, nothing really gets done around here without some kind of minor crisis happening. Now, I do have a bunch of beans planted in the 3 beds behind me where the trellises are. I was supposed to have bush beans, and all along the fence line were supposed to be runner beans. I soaked my beans like I was supposed to, but because we had a delay in time, turns out they accidentally soaked for about 48 hours. Whoops. That's okay though, because I put in some sneaky seed orders the other night, and they should be here pretty soon. I'm moving away from my husband. They should be here pretty soon though, and I'm not seeing any growth coming out of the beans. I did plant them. Maybe some will come up and surprise us, but that's about the only seed and plant loss we've had so far. So far so good. So I do have a lot of things that are planted in the ground already, like the beans. Over here on the first row, on the other side, I've planted peanuts and sunflowers and things like that. But unless you have x-ray vision, there's just not a whole lot I can show you right now. It's going to be really exciting to see what the garden turns into in just a few short weeks. My husband, who works out of town, I told him I needed to take a picture of him right beside the garden before he leaves, just so we can like measure and see. But thankfully there's YouTube to, I guess, chronicle these kind of things. This is my work wagon where I have all of my seeds and my seed collection here and some leftover babies. But here's my trellis, and this won't look the same. Right now it looks like a rectangle. We're going to take the top off and close it up, make it into a triangle pitch, and we're going to put a second one here, and you're going to be able to see us make that second one. Not all of my planting was as meticulous as my squash and my tomatoes and things like that, where I did a lot of neighbor planting. Some things were just because of space and because I had these things to put down, so why not? This is of course our trellis, and like I said, that there's going to be another one right here where I'm standing. And the best thing that I did as far as that goes was on one side I put my light melons that'll grow over the trellis and obviously end on this side. Because they're going to end on this side, I didn't plant anything on the opposite side of the trellis that would compete for space. So I'll put flowers there. And I try to keep things like that in mind whenever I was planting. What's going to crowd out what's going to get bigger than life, and what's going to complement what's planted next to it. Here we have Mod Podge eggplants and some like orphan leftover peppers that didn't really have any other place to go. But I also did flowers there and cardoons here, which a cardoon is a stemmed artichoke and not the globe kind. But so yeah, so, you know, it's kind of Mod Podge. They're kind of put wherever they can be, but I think they're awesome. Like I said, like I was saying in the big garden, I haven't planted all of my seeds yet. I'm not done buying transplants. I'm not done creating transplants. Right now we're in the kids' garden. I'm really stoked and super excited to see what they're going to be planting over here. Much of it will be hand-me-downs that didn't have space in my garden, but I'm still really excited. Relevant though, I thought it'd be fun to kind of ask everybody what are they most excited about seeing coming out of these gardens, and so I'm going to start it. I think the thing I'm most excited about coming out of the gardens, besides literally everything, probably the potatoes. I'm really excited for the potatoes, the peanuts, and everything. I don't really think that it's mostly the food I'm excited about, but exactly what I'm going to be able to do with it. I have a lot of cooking projects coming up in the future, and I'm really excited about that. So let's ask everybody else what they're excited for. Okay, what are you most excited about growing in the gardens?
French fries.
French fries? No. What are you most excited for?
Pine cones.
Pine cones? Okay. Are you excited for all of the yummy food? Yeah?
I want all of them. I want to eat them all.
Me too. What are you most excited about to come out of the garden?
Mom, look at
Who, me?
Yes.
Mama.
Peanuts and herbs.
Mama, look.
Why the herbs?
I like cooking with fresh herbs. I like to have a lot of fresh fruit on hand.
Mickey!
Thank y'all so much for hanging out with us today. If you haven't already, please subscribe. We've got great things growing and coming in the future. Can you say I'll see you later?
See you later.
See you later.